Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really immersing ourselves in the career of American filmmaker David Lowery. And it's quite a career, isn't it? Almost contradictory.
Oh, absolutely. You used the perfect word, contradictory. It's like he operates on these two totally different planes simultaneously.
Yeah, like the title, we were kicking around the sheet ghost and the dragon. It sort of sums it up perfectly. 1 minute, it's this quiet, contemplative, almost silent figure.
And the next is this massive, CGI spectacle.
Exactly. So he was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, December 26, 1980. But he's really built this fascinating duality in his work.
He really has. It's rare, isn't it, to find someone who can just slide so easily between, say, a super intimate, micro-budget indie film.
Where he's often editing it himself, deep in the weeds.
And then turn around and helm a huge 9-figure live-action blockbuster for a studio like Disney. It's quite the balancing act.
It really is. So our mission today, our deep dive, is basically to unpack that. How does he do it? How does he maintain what feels like a very singular personal vision across projects that are just worlds apart in terms of scale, budget, audience, everything?
Yeah, tracing that path from being this beloved Texas indie filmmaker
to becoming this trusted director for massive studio properties. It's a journey.
It is. And we need to figure out, like you said, how the same filmmaker gives us something as profoundly quiet and strange as A Ghost Story in 2017.
Right. Practically no dialogue, just pure mood and time.
And then, just the year before, in 2016, he delivered Pete's Dragon, which was this big, warm, critically acclaimed family film for Disney.
And then pivots again to something like The Green Knight in 2021, which is this huge, visually stunning, but also really ambiguous medieval fantasy.
And that range is incredible. That's the puzzle, the aha moment we want to get into.
Okay, so where do we start? To understand the guy directing The Dragon, maybe we need to go back to the roots, the Indie Foundation.
Yeah. Exactly. Act 1, the Indie Foundation and those formative years. Because the craftsman, the technical filmmaker, seems key here.
So background first. He's the eldest of 9 kids, born to Madeline and Mark Lowery.
9 kids!
I know, right? And when he was 7, the family moved to Irving, Texas. He went to Irving High School there.
Being the oldest of 9. I mean, you have to imagine that teaches you something about managing chaos, maybe. Leading a group.
That's a great point. Film sets are nothing if not managed chaos. And that hands-on thing, that commitment, it definitely started early. The sources say he wrote and directed his first short film, Lullaby, back in 2000. He was only 19.
19. And already diving in head first. And look at the roles he took on for Lullaby. It wasn't just writing and directing.
No, he did pretty much everything. Producer, editor, and director of photography or camera operator. The whole technical shebang.
And that's the blueprint, isn't it? That deep dive into the actual mechanics of filmmaking right from the start. Being the editor, being the DP.
It gives you a different understanding for sure. When you're directing later, even massive stars, you know what the camera needs, you know how the scene will cut together because you've done it.
Precisely. That foundational hands-on experience is invaluable. It's not abstract for him.
So that early work quickly led to his first feature, right? St. Nick. Came out in 2009.
Yep, St. Nick. Following these 2 runaway kids who've been abandoned.
And you can already see some themes emerging there, can't you? Young characters, kind of lost, searching for something. That sort of melancholy feel that runs through a lot of his indie work, often set against that specific Texas landscape.
Definitely. And St. Nick was crucial for getting him noticed,
Yes.
especially within that independent film world, cementing his Texas identity. It premiered at South by Southwest SXSW.
Which is a huge launching pad, especially for Texas filmmakers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it picked up some significant awards early on. The Texas Filmmaker Award at the AFI Dallas International Film Festival in 2009, and a special jury award at Sidewalk Film Festival.
So real recognition, not just participation trophies. The industry was noticing.
Yeah, it signaled, pay attention to this guy. A distinct voice was emerging.
And he was smart about it too, strategically. He set up his own production company, Sailor Bear, just a couple of years later in 2011.
Right, which is a classic move for filmmakers who want to maintain control, right? Protect their vision, nurture specific kinds of stories, and keep that Texas connection strong.
Okay, so St. Nick gets him noticed. Sailor Bear gives him a base. But the real breakout, the one that put him on the international radar, that has to be Ain't Them Bodies Saints, right? 2013.
Yeah, absolutely. Ain't Them Bodies Saints. That's where the aesthetic, the Lowery feel, really clicks into place for a wider audience. And again, look at his involvement, writer, director, and editor.
Total control. And this is where he first teams up with Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck, who become really important collaborators for him later on.
Key players, definitely. And the film just exploded onto the festival scene, nominated for the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance in 2013.
Which is massive for an indie film.
Huge. And then it immediately went international, competing in the Critics' Week section at the Cannes Film Festival that same year. That's a serious stamp of approval.
People describe it as like a lyrical crime story. What does that really mean in terms of his style?
Well, it's not your typical crime movie, right? He's less interested in the plot mechanics of the crime itself. It's more about the fallout, the emotional residue, the longing, the isolation of the characters afterwards.
It's kind of dreamlike, melancholy.
Exactly. The pacing is very deliberate, often slow. The camera lingers. The look is very specific too, sort of muted, nostalgic colors.
Let's dig into the influences he mentioned for that film, because they're quite revealing, I think. He talked about Claire Denis's 35 shots of rum.
Right. Very atmospheric, character-focused.
Robert Altman's McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
The ultimate revisionist Western. Moody, complex.
And then Paul Thomas Anderson and David Fincher.
Yeah, that's the fascinating mix, isn't it? You've got the art house moodiness of Denis and Altman.
Focused on character and atmosphere over plot.
And McCabe especially, using a genre of the Western to explore something deeper, almost poetic, about community and failure.
Okay, but then you throw in PTA, who brings that artistry, but often on a bigger canvas, and especially Fincher. Fincher means precision, technical control, razor-sharp execution. How does that fit into a quiet, atmospheric indie like Ain't Them Bodies Saints?
That's the key, I think. The Fincher influence isn't about fast cuts or obvious technical flashiness here. It's about the control, the meticulous composition of the shots, even the quiet ones, the rigid framing sometimes, the carefully managed color palette, the desaturated, almost antique look.
So he's using Fincher-level precision, but in service of mood and atmosphere, not necessarily action or plot propulsion.
Exactly. It's technical rigor used to deepen the emotional impact, the sense of time and place. And that synthesis atmospheric storytelling combined with absolute technical command is precisely what allows him to eventually make that leap to something enormous like Pete's Dragon. He already had the control needed for complex visuals.
That makes perfect sense. That deep technical skill, especially the editing, it leads us right into Act Two. Lowery as this multi-hyphenate craftsman, his editing work, often for other directors, is almost like a hidden superpower.
It really is. And understand that parallel career as an editor is crucial, like you said, to grasp how he controls rhythm, tone, structure. It's not just a side gig. It feels fundamental.
We saw it on Lullaby, doing everything himself, but editing for others, that's maybe even more telling about his specific skill set.
I think so. He edited Amy Simons' Sun Don't Shine in 2012. But the big one, the really defining one, is probably his work on Shane Carruth's Upstream Color in 2013.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Upstream Color. That film is an editing challenge, doesn't even begin to cover it. It's incredibly nonlinear, fractured.
Completely. It basically lives in the editing. The story, the feeling, the timeline, it's all constructed or maybe deconstructed in the edit. He wasn't just assembling scenes. He was building this intricate temporal mosaic.
Handling that level of ambiguity, the fractal time, memory loops.
It's incredibly complex. You're creating coherence out of near incoherence, finding the emotional thread through it all. And he nailed it. Got nominations for Best Editing from the Chicago Critics, LA Critics, the Independent Spirit Awards.
Major recognition for his editing chops.
Absolutely. And to think about it becoming a critically acclaimed editor known for handling complex, dislocated timelines. That's the perfect training ground for tackling the profound time jumps and the long, static, unsettling takes in his own future film, A Ghost Story. He had already mastered manipulating time in the edit suite.
That technical versatility showed up in his writing too, right? He wasn't just focused on his own directorial projects. He co-wrote Pit Stop in 2013 with Yentan.
Yeah, another festival success.
Yeah.
Won Best Screenplay at the Nashville Film Festival. It shows he could collaborate, serve another director's vision, not just his own. He wasn't precious about only directing his own scripts.
Okay, let's look at a project that highlights the bumps in the road, the realities of Hollywood development, even for a rising talent. The Yellow Birds.
Ah, yes. That's a really interesting case study. It was announced back at Cannes in 2014, positioned as a pretty big deal for him. Lowery was set to write and direct the adaptation.
And the source material was significant. Kevin Power's novel, a National Book Award finalist in 2012, a serious war story.
Definitely signaled that the industry saw him as capable of handling heavier dramatic material, potentially on a larger scale.
That's not quite how it played out, was it?
No. The film eventually got made, starring Jack Huston, Jennifer Aniston, but it was directed by Alexander Morse. Lowery still got the writing credit. but he didn't end up directing.
So what does that tell us about the process?
Well, it just underscores how complicated feature film development can be, especially when you move towards bigger budgets or higher profile source material. There are so many moving parts, producers, financiers, star attachments. Things shift.
Even for a director with heat coming off Sundance and Cannes.
Exactly. It shows Lowery was already navigating those tricky studio waters, learning the system, before he actually directed his first major studio film. That experience, even if maybe frustrating at the time, probably helped prepare him for the leap.
Which brings us perfectly to Act 3, the studio leap, and then that immediate, almost whiplash-inducing return to his personal auteur roots. 2016 is the pivotal year here. He directs Pete's Dragon for Disney.
And what a leap. Going from his usual indie budgets, which were often under $1 million, to a reported $90 million for Pete's Dragon. That's a different universe.
It was a live-action reimagining, right? Loosely based on the '77 Disney musical. He directed and co-wrote it with Toby Halbrooks.
Yeah, and you have to ask, why did Disney choose him? The guy known for quiet, melancholic indie dramas.
Well, presumably, they didn't just want a generic kids movie. They wanted that heart, that sense of wonder, that emotional depth he'd shown in his other work, but applied to their IP.
And by all accounts, he delivered. Pete's Dragon got really strong reviews. Critics praised its sincerity, its visual warmth. It wasn't cynical or overloaded with CGI, just for the sake of it.
It even won that Truly Moving Picture Award from the Heartland Film Festival. So he proved he could handle the scale, manage the effects, deliver a big family film, and keep that emotional core intact.
Mission accomplished, you'd think. So logically, the next step for most directors in that position would be
line up the next big studio project, right? Capitalize on the success. Strike while the iron's hot.
But that's not what Lowery did at all. He did the absolute opposite, almost like a palate cleanser was needed, urgently.
This is the key anecdote, isn't it? The summer of 2016, Pete's Dragon is releasing, getting good reviews, and he's secretly shooting a ghost story.
Secretly. The contrast is just mind-boggling. Imagine the mental shift. Going from a massive set, hundreds of crew, managing complex visual effects for a flying dragon.
To basically sneaking off to shoot in a single house, skeleton crew, tiny budget, with Casey Affleck under a literal white sheet for most of it.
It's almost defiant, isn't it? A ghost story feels like a deeply personal statement. Lowery took on directing, writing, and editing again. Total control.
And that editing skill we talked about, honed on things like upstream color, really came to the forefront again. He won the Boston Society of Film Critics Award for Best Editing for A Ghost Story.
Because the editing is the film, in many ways. It's all about time, loss, memory. How do you convey eternity, or the slow crawl of grief?
Through those incredibly long, static takes, right? Where nothing much happens, but you feel the time passing.
Exactly. He forces you, the viewer, to sit in that stillness, to feel the ghost waiting, and then bam, a sudden cut, and you jump decades, centuries even. That control over duration and temporal shifts is masterful. He makes the ghost experience feel both incredibly vast and intensely present.
And he was so invested, he even apparently has a tiny cameo himself, uncredited, as another ghost in the background.
Huh. Really? Just fully immersed. It's like he needed to prove, maybe to himself as much as anyone, yes, I could do the big Disney movie, but this is also me. This quiet, strange, personal stuff is still my core.
So after that extreme swing back to micro-budget, where did he go next? He didn't just stay in the tiny indie world.
No, he found a sort of middle ground, perhaps. Still personal, still character-driven, but with a bit more structure and star power. He directed The Old Man and the Gun in 2018.
Right, with Robert Redford. Playing the real-life gentleman bank robber Forrest Tucker. Casey Affleck was in that one, too. Lowery wrote the screenplay and directed.
And it felt gentle, almost elegiac, like a tribute not just to this charming criminal, but maybe to Redford himself and that era of filmmaking he represented. Lowery applied his signature lyrical, reflective style to a true story, a biopic framework.
And it worked critically, too, right?
Oh, yeah. Got a Best Film nomination at the London Film Festival, Best Adapted Screenplay nom from the San Diego critics. It showed he could bring his distinct sensibility to genre material, to biographical stories, without losing his voice.
So the pattern emerges. Use the clout from the big project to get the personal one made, and use the artistry of the personal one to keep the studios interested in your unique vision for their bigger project.
Exactly. It's a symbiotic relationship he seems to have mastered.
Okay, Act 4. This feels like where he really starts synthesizing those two sides, the epic scale and the introspective mood, with The Green Knight in 2021.
Yeah, The Green Knight, a full-blown medieval fantasy epic. That's a big swing.
adapting a really famous but also quite strange and difficult Arthurian poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Massive undertaking. And look who's starring. Dev Patel, Alicia Vikander, Joel Edgerton, big names, and Lowery. He's back in full multi-hyphenate mode. Director, writer, editor, and producer.
Applying that indie filmmaker total control approach to this huge mythological canvas.
And what's fascinating is how he approaches it. It's not a typical fantasy action movie. He takes this epic quest narrative and infuses it with that same deliberate, dreamlike pacing, that same thematic ambiguity we saw in A Ghost Story.
Right. It's less about the sword fights, more about the psychology. Honor, temptation, facing mortality, the meaning of chivalry. He makes the epic feel internal, introspective.
Turning the cosmic into something intimate. The film's release itself got complicated, though.
Ah, right. COVID. It was meant to premiere at SXSW in March 2020.
Which got canceled. So it didn't actually come out until July 2021. But the reaction, when it landed, was pretty fantastic. Especially praise for the visuals, the unique style. Racked up nominations, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay from Chicago critics, nods at the Critics' Choice Super Awards for fantasy.
And around the same time, he was still doing smaller things, too. There was an anthology film.
Yeah, The Year the Everlasting Storm, also in 2021. It premiered at Cannes, a collection of shorts made during the pandemic. Lowery contributed a segment called Dig Up My Darling. These pandemic projects often feel very raw, very essential.
Stripped-down filmmaking. And meanwhile, the Disney relationship was still active.
Oh, yeah. After Pete's Dragon proved he could deliver for them, they tapped him again for another major IP. He'd actually signed on back in 2016 to direct a live-action take on Peter Pan.
Which eventually became Peter Pan and Wendy, released on Disney Plus in 2023.
Right. He directed and co-wrote that one, too.
Right.
With Alexander Maloney as Peter, Jude Law as Captain Hook, Ever Anderson as Wendy.
So doing a second huge Disney film really cements that trust, doesn't it? They clearly believe he can handle their biggest properties, deliver the spectacle, but also bring that emotional depth, that unique perspective.
Absolutely. He proved he could thread that needle. And his versatility extends beyond just film features. He's directed television, too.
Right. He did an episode of Rectify back in 2014, which was a very atmospheric, character-driven show, fit his style well.
And a couple of episodes of Strange Angel in 2018, where he's also an executive producer on those. Plus, something quite different.
The National Geographic thing.
Yeah, a 2017 episode of the series Breakthrough. His was called Addiction, a psychedelic cure. Yeah. So, delving into documentary science, social issues, showed a real breadth of interest beyond fiction.
And the most recent, biggest mainstream TV gig, Star Wars.
Right. Directing 2 episodes of the upcoming Star Wars Skeleton Crew series set for 2024. That's about as big as IP gets.
Definitely. The episode titles mentioned are way, way out past the barrier and very interesting as an astrogation problem.
Which sounds kind of perfect for him, actually.
Yeah.
One suggests vast cosmic exploration. The other implies intricate technical problem solving. That duality again, wonder and rigor.
It's the ultimate validation, isn't it? Being trusted with Star Wars.
Pretty much. Okay, so that brings us towards the end, Act V. Let's touch on the personal context that might inform all this and look ahead.
Right. Personal life details: married fellow filmmaker Augustine Frizzell in 2010, and importantly, they live in Dallas. He's maintained that connection to Texas, to that indie film scene there.
That grounding seems really important to his identity. And then there are the details about his core beliefs. He identifies as an atheist.
And he's been a vegan since around 1996, so for decades.
Yeah, these aren't casual choices. Being an atheist, being a committed vegan for that long, it suggests a very considered, very disciplined personal philosophy, a consistency in his own life.
And maybe that consistency, that discipline, fuels his commitment to supporting other independent filmmakers. He does a lot of executive producing.
He really does. It's like he's actively using the platform and maybe the resources he gets from the bigger studio gigs to lift up the next wave of indie voices, paying it forward.
Ensuring that the kind of filmmaking that launched him continues to thrive. We see his EP credits on films like Never Going Back.
This Juneteenth.
We're All Going to the World's Fair. Really interesting, diverse projects.
That kind of mentorship, that support for the ecosystem is huge. He's not just taking, he's giving back to that indie world.
So looking ahead, what's next on his slate? The big one seems to be Mother Mary.
Ah, yes, Mother Mary for A24, which, A24 is pretty much synonymous with director-driven, artistically ambitious films.
Feels like a perfect home for him. And this project sounds like it could bring everything together. It's described as a music drama.
Starring Anne Hathaway and Michaela Cole. I mean, that's serious star power.
And Lowery is set to write, direct, and produce, back in that full control, multi-hyphenate role.
But the really intriguing part, for me at least, is the music collaboration. Jack Antonoff and Charlie XCX are writing original songs for it.
Okay, that's a combination. Lowery's quiet visual poetry and emotional depth, mixed with Antonoff's often maximalist pop production and Charlie XCX's edgy, futuristic pop sound.
Right. It suggests something really ambitious, maybe trying to bridge that gap between, like, high art aesthetics and mainstream pop culture, which perfectly mirrors Lowery's whole career duality.
High art meets high pop. It sounds potentially amazing, a complex drama about celebrity, music, maybe faith or fandom, given the title, but with A-list talent and cutting-edge music.
It feels like it could be a culmination, pulling together everything he's learned, moving between the micro-budget personal films and the massive studio spectacles. Visually stunning, emotionally complex, maybe culturally resonant too.
Definitely one to watch. So, wrapping this up, we've explored this really remarkable career trajectory, this constant, seemingly deliberate dance between extremes.
Yeah, the filmmaker who can be editing a quiet, intense indie film about grief and time one year,
Earning critical editing nominations for it.
and simultaneously be prepping or directing a massive Disney movie like Peter Pan and Wendy.
It really demonstrates this rare mastery of both intimacy and scale. He can handle the intricate editing of something like Upstream Color and the mythological weight and VFX demands of The Green Knight.
And somehow, through it all, maintain that signature style, that slow, contemplative, visually precise, emotionally resonant feel. That adaptability, that versatility feels very modern. Maybe it's the blueprint for how an auteur survives and thrives today. You have to be able to navigate all these different levels.
And for you, the listener, the takeaway seems clear. That grounding in fundamental craft, especially something like editing, combined with a really strong, personal, consistent vision, that's what builds the trust needed to command projects at every scale.
Absolutely. That blend of quiet contemplation and big ambition is so unique. But let's leave you with one final thought to chew on, connecting his personal context back to the work itself.
Okay. So we noted he identifies as an atheist, has these long-held, disciplined personal beliefs like veganism, a secular worldview, essentially.
Right. So how does that specific, grounded, secular perspective fuel his film's relentless obsession with the big, eternal, almost spiritual questions?
That's a great question. Because his most personal films, like A Ghost Story, or ambitious ones like The Green Knight, they dive headfirst into themes of time, mortality, legacy, the search for meaning.
What endures after death? How does memory function across centuries? How do you live a meaningful life in the face of oblivion? These are huge, cosmic, almost religious questions.
But explores through a lens that, based on his own stated beliefs, doesn't rely on traditional religious answers or supernatural frameworks.
Exactly. It suggests his exploration is profoundly humanistic, maybe existential. It's grounded in observation in the human condition, maybe in a kind of disciplined, objective look at existence, rather than faith.
So the ghost in A Ghost Story isn't waiting for heaven or hell. He's just waiting, anchored to a place, watching time erase things. Gawain in The Green Knight isn't necessarily guided by God. He's wrestling with human codes of honor, fear, desire.
That tension, exploring these vast, timeless, spiritual-seeming questions from a grounded, disciplined, perhaps secular perspective, that might be what gives his work its unique power, its gravity.
A secular spirituality, maybe?
Yeah.
Finding the profound and the tangible in the passage of time itself and human connection and memory, rather than looking outwards or upwards?
Perhaps. It's definitely something to think about as you watch his films. That consistent personal philosophy wrestling with these epic eternal themes. From the quiet vigil of a sheet ghost to the soaring flight of a dragon.
A fascinating contradiction to ponder. And that's our deep dive for today on David Lowery. Thanks for joining us.